By God's Grace is a really good film and a really emotional one as well. This was released in 2014. It was directed by Brett Eichenberger and written by Debbie Preston and Jill Remensnyder. And this stars Cameron Deane Stewart as Chris and Savannah McReynolds as Grace. And this is set around Christmas, and Chris runs his company, and he's not exactly in the holiday spirit, and he's quite nasty to his workers, not letting them go away for Christmas, and is generally not a very good person. And that evening, he is visited by the spirit of his little sister. And straight away, I knew that this was going to be emotional because if the spirit of his sister, who I think was maybe about 12, I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember if they mentioned her age, but she was definitely a little girl. And I thought, well, hang on. If he's being visited by the spirit of his child sister, that means the girl must have died as a child. And we do find out about that, and I won't go into any detail about it as I don't want to spoil it. But straight away, that made it so much more emotional than any other version of Jacob Marley that I have ever seen. To be honest, it's not too much like A Christmas Carol beyond the basic concept of the character being visited by a spirit and being shown various things to help him realise the error of his ways. So it's very loosely based on A Christmas Carol, but honestly, it works really well. Grace takes Chris through a photo album that he has, and that's how we get to go into his past, his childhood, and we see what that was like, and what it was like when Grace first came into his life as his baby sister, and then obviously things that happened to the family and things that made Chris put up a wall in front of him. He definitely protects himself from the outside world, but unfortunately, because he has closed his heart off, that means that he's got a very negative, cold outlook, and especially at Christmas time, that doesn't do very well at all. And young Grace is there to teach him that his outlook needs to change and he needs to be kind and thoughtful rather than this cold-hearted individual that he's become. It's a beautiful story. It's very emotional. It is a little slow at times. If I'm going to, find an area with room for improvement, I'd say there are times when the pacing was kind of slow and I didn't feel like we were moving forward very steadily, but not so much that I ever felt like it was dragging too much. Just at times I felt like we could have quickened things up a bit, or at least brought in another element to make it a bit more engaging when the narrative was a bit slower. But in general, the narrative worked really well. Chris is one of those characters who we can see is not behaving his best, but I think he's likeable still. And obviously, the more we learn about him and his past and the reasons that led him to be this cold-hearted individual, it becomes very easy to feel for him. And I think that that's really important if we're going to emotionally get behind his journey. Grace was very likeable from the beginning, of course, and it's a really enjoyable film. It is emotional. I did cry, and I wasn't expecting it, so that's something to look out for if you're not necessarily feeling your most emotionally stable at the moment. The film is quite sensitive, but I think it's very well done. It's a beautiful story, some really great messages, very well told, and all things considered, I really enjoyed it. If By God's Grace sounds like your kind of film, then I would definitely say it's worth checking out.